So I've done another video on this guy because I really quite like the way he thinks. His name is Tristan and he's an American who was living in Australia. The only thing I will say about his videos is that his understanding of Australia is based on Northern Australia. So there are things which quite often I will disagree with. But I was watching this video and I thought this is one that I do have some things that I want to correct or comment on. So let's jump in.
What's good, y'all? Tristan here, and today we're going to be going over 25 differences between America and Australia. Let's get right into it. Number one is going to court for traffic violations. So, in America, if you get a speeding ticket, it is technically a criminal offense. It's like the very lowest level of criminal offense, but it's still technically a criminal offense, and you have to go to court and all this stuff. It's like a huge process to get rid of a ticket. Not huge, but it's just a real pain in the ass. Whereas here in Australia, if you get a speeding ticket, unless if you're going way over the limit, it's just gonna be a fine, and you can just pay it online, and yeah, that's it.
Now I have a question, because I've heard people discussing on YouTube that if they get a speeding ticket in America, they can do traffic school and then they don't lose demerit points and the whole thing is just wiped. In Australia, if you get a speeding ticket, those demerit points stay for, I think it's 3 years. So while just getting a speeding ticket isn't considered a criminal offence here in Australia, it doesn't just go away. You don't pay the fine and then forget about it because you have got those demerit points taken off your licence. If you lose 12 demerit points over a particular period of time, then you will have your licence disqualified. If you are driving too much over the limit, then that is going to land you in court and you may find yourself in jail. So he is correct, it does depend on the severity of what you're doing, but I thought it was important to clarify here, and he probably just simply forgot to clarify. You still lose demerit points for speeding, even if you pay it online. In Australia, we pay a lot of stuff online. Even if you have to go to court because it is a serious speeding offence, you don't pay it at the court. You still have to pay it online.
Number two is the way that they address things in Australia. So, where I'm staying right now, I'll be out of here by the time I post this, but it is 6 Beach Road, Surfers Paradise. So it's 6 is the address, the number. In America, I've never seen a number less than 3, 100. Most of them are in the thousands or 10,000. Whereas in Australia, it's just 1 or 2 digits most of the time. Why this is because in Australia, how it works is whatever a road starts, that building's 1, 2, 3, 4, it just counts as the road goes. Whereas in America, I don't know exactly how it works. I don't know how they pick what number to start at, but it's something like if this block is 1800s, and the next block will be 1900s, and the next block will be the 2000s, and then every single block, every single street over on that same street, it goes up by 100.
I have questions. So I gather what he's saying is that part of the number is the block number. So you might have the number 100 and something and that's the first block, or 59 something and that's the 59 block. So the other part of the number, how is the block itself numbered? Because does the numbering start fresh at the beginning of every block? Does that mean that blocks in America are really, really, really long? Or does the numbering continue in a straight line, but the block number changes before the number? So you might have one block where the housing numbers go from 1 to 10 and the block number before that is 1, and then the second block would be 2 and the numbers start at 11. Or do the numbers just start again? Or do the numbers go around the actual block in a circular way? I don't understand American house numbering, and if someone can help me out and explain that to me, that'd be great.
Number 3 is how they do data here in America and in Australia. So you will see data packages for your cell phone. That'll be 60 gigs of data a month, 100 gigs of data. I've seen 150 gigs of data a month. Like you could not use 150, and that's not for a family. That is like per line. Like I could not use 150 gigs of data if I tried. Whereas in America, we don't have really high data options like that. Like our options usually are like 4, 5, 10, like maybe 12 gigs of data a month, like nothing big, or like 20 gigs for a family to share, something like that. And then if you want more data than that, which is like most people, then you just get unlimited. Like I've always had unlimited data my whole life. Everyone I know just gets unlimited data. Like having a limit on our data is just not usually a thing really. Which sounds nice and all, but keep in mind I pay about twice as much for my cell phone bill when I'm in America as to when I'm here.
Another thing that I'd like clarified, because I was told that in America, data generally isn't capped. So where he's talking about those small amounts of data, are they like roaming data or something that's not part of your whole package? Is that like if you have a mobile phone that's just a prepaid, or what Americans call burner phones? I'm not sure, I'm confused. But that said, in Australia, it really is actually kind of expensive when you look at data, because you have a data allocation for the month, and if you use that, then you have to start paying up front for the data, and that's when it starts getting really, really expensive. So, but it's interesting that he says that it's more expensive in America, but at the same time he's saying that there's no limitations on the data, so does that maybe even it out? Also, in terms of the amount of data you can use, let's not forget that if you are using streaming services, that's going to use a heck of a lot of data, so that's where people do go up to like 100 gig a month and stuff.
Number 4 is we do not eat our national animals. So here in Australia they eat kangaroos, whereas in America, yeah, we don't eat bald eagles.
That is a really good point, but then at the same time you're looking at two completely different types of animals, although eagles are birds, not animals, but you know what I mean. But also what's interesting, that on our Australian coat of arms we have the emu and the kangaroo, both of which we do eat. But at the same time, let's also not forget that in terms of population in Australia, there are more kangaroos than there are people. In America, there are not more bald eagles than there are people. So you have to look at the availability of that particular animal in terms of being used for meat. And in Australia, we do have times when we have to cull emus and we have to cull kangaroos, because they do breed quite readily and the populations can grow quite quickly.
Number 5 is calamari. So in America, I feel like calamari is kind of like a fancy, upscale, nice food, where in Australia it's like the total opposite. It's like super common at every single restaurant. Like it's really like not fancy at all. Like I was at a fish and chip shop and they had the option to replace your fish with calamari. It's just like really cheap, really accessible. You can get it everywhere, and yeah, it's just like finger food here.
The largest portion of the Australian population lives on the coast, so it's kind of to be expected that we do love our seafood. The availability of seafood in Australia is great, and there's a huge industry, a huge fishing industry all around Australia. And of course, Australia's isolation means that we are surrounded by some pretty good sources of seafood. So there's plenty to be found out there in the oceans around Australia. So yeah, seafood is not hugely expensive here in Australia, and things like calamari are quite easy to come by and relatively affordable.
Number 6 is posties, or like our mail delivery men and women. Anyways, in America, they go around delivering your mail in a little like car vehicle that looks like this. Whereas in Australia, they go around on these little yellow motorcycles that look like that.
So this is something that I actually didn't know. So wouldn't it be far easier to be doing mail on a bike? Because the thing is, with our posties, they don't actually get off the bike. They just kind of tilt the bike, pull the mail out of the bag, whack it in the box, and then keep going. Whereas with those vans, you'd have to be constantly jumping out of the van and then putting the mail in the box. Or, I guess my question is, in Australia, parcel delivery is separate, for the most part, from mail delivery. You might have small packages with your mail, with the guy on the bike, but parcel delivery is done in a van. So, is it that in America, mail and parcels are all done together?
Number 7 is checks. So, well, first of all, we spell it differently. In America, you spell checks like this, and in Australia, you spell it like that. But the point I want to make is that checks are still really common in America. So, like, it's very common to get paid by, like, an actual paper check. You also can pay people in checks. Like, that's not as common, that's kind of dying, but it still exists. In Australia, I've never seen a check once. I've never heard of anyone getting paid with a check. That's so ancient, like, that's archaic. I don't know why we still use them in America, but we do.
So, in Australia, it reached a point where you couldn't cash checks anywhere. Checks were no longer accepted anywhere. And to the best of my knowledge, banks don't give their customers bank books anymore. As far as I know, the only checks that you're going to see in Australia are what are called bank checks. And these are basically what you use for purchasing large items. So if you are going to go and purchase a car for cash, then you go to the bank and you get the bank to write up a bank check for you, which means that that money is guaranteed. The money has basically already been paid into that check, and the place where you give the bank check just puts that in their bank account and the money is cleared. So in Australia, the only checks we have these days are bank checks, and they're for large amounts of money. I find it amazing that people in America are paid by check in terms of wages and stuff. Here, it's all electronic transfers, which means that on the day that your pay goes in, it's right there in your bank the moment you get up, basically. If you're paid by check in America, does that mean you have to go somewhere and you have to cash the check first to get the money, or do you have to go to the bank and you have to put the check in the bank to get the money? And is there a wait for like a clearing time? Because that would mean that if you're paid by check, wouldn't you have to wait like 2-3 days before you got the money? That seems really outdated. If someone could explain how the check system works in America, that'd be great.
Number 8 is the type of TV ads we have in America versus here. So in America, there are 2 types of ads that are like, they're really common and I've never seen them in Australia. One is like medical like commercials, like, you know, like buy this medicine, ask your doctor about this. First of all, it's just kind of weird, but secondly, those are actually illegal in Australia. You cannot advertise drugs in Australia, but in America, we do. And the other type of commercials are lawyer commercials. You'll see so many commercials that are like, have you been hurt in a car accident? Like, call Bill and we will get you your money. Like, pretty much they are just advertisements that are like, do you need to sue anyone? We will sue people for you and get you money. And they're really weird, and like, yeah, they don't have them here in Australia, all over the TV in America.
In terms of advertising drugs, they can advertise, and they do advertise Panadol. So your basic paracetamol or ibuprofen type drugs can be advertised, but you never see ads for any other things. In terms of lawyers advertising, it's not the big billion-dollar industry here in Australia that it is in America. We're not a litigious country, so people don't stub their toe on a trolley and then sue the supermarket for millions of dollars. It just doesn't happen here in Australia. We don't have that whole American culture of suing over everything, of taking people to court over everything. Mostly here, we do our best to avoid confrontation At the worst, if someone bumps into you in the supermarket, most people are just going to turn around and apologise to the person who bumped into them. But, you know, if people get into some sort of scuffle and get injured, the most that you might see is someone swearing at someone else. It's rarely going to turn into some kind of litigious thing like you see in America.
Alright, now these next 5 or so were all pointed out to me by some subscribers. I had some of you DM me on Instagram and telling me I should put these in a video. So thank you so much if you did that, and here they are. Number 9 are school buses. So in America, school buses are yellow and they can go like any other cars, whereas in Australia, school buses look like this and they cannot go over 40 kilometers an hour. In America, the school buses also flash out this little stop sign on the side of it whenever they're dropping kids off, and then cars going both directions on the road, the entire road just stops for these kids to get out. It's really annoying. I mean, I guess safety first, but it's really annoying. In Australia, they don't do that.
Maybe there are some areas of suburban Queensland where school buses won't go over 40 kilometres an hour, but that's certainly something that I've never heard of anywhere else in Australia. There's no speed limitations on school buses other than on a highway. I believe that heavier vehicles like school buses are limited to 100 kilometres as opposed to 110 if it's an open speed. But certainly school buses will travel at the allocated speed in the area that they're at. So if you're in a residential area and the speed limit is 50, the school buses will go 50. Unless, of course, they're doing multiple stops, then that is perhaps why they are seen to be only going 40. As for saying that Australian school buses don't have the flashing lights on the bus, perhaps that hasn't happened in Queensland, but I know that in Tasmania, it was definitely becoming a big thing, and it is becoming more and more frequently used. There are flashing lights on the back of school buses, and you are expected, if you are behind a school bus, to stop when the lights are flashing. It is considered to be part of the whole safety thing for kids. If the lights are flashing, the bus is stopped and kids are getting off. Also, while we don't have anything that resemble those cool little yellow school buses that America has, we do have many, many different types of buses that are school buses. It just depends on the company that does the school run, because for the most part, school buses in Australia are provided by companies, private companies. So it depends on what sort of buses they purchase for the school runs. In rural areas, in areas outside of the cities and the suburbs, you may see much smaller buses doing areas where there isn't a huge number of children who get the bus to school. So the types of buses that you will see for school buses in Australia are very, very varied. Not just that one type of bus that he showed in that image.
Also, every single school in America, from elementary or primary school here, all the way up to secondary and high school, they all have mascots. In Australia, they don't have mascots with their high schools, at least. I don't know, maybe a couple do, but it's not common. In America, every single one has a mascot.
True that. But we also don't have the same kind of school culture that they have in America. We don't have these massive sports games where you have just hundreds of thousands of people or whatever going to a sports game because it's a school sports game. In Australia, school sports are basically pretty much attended just by parents of the kids who are playing. And there's certainly no mascots there. There's no cheerleaders. It's really, really low key. It's not something that you have a big rally over.
Number 14 is this popular school kid game. So in America, we call this Foursquare, while in Australia, it is called either downball or handball.
Okay, that's definitely a Northern Australia thing, because I've only ever known it as Foursquare or King Square. I've never heard it referred to as downball or handball. So it is perhaps a little bit more similar than what he realises.
Number 15 is flavored milk or bottles of iced coffee. So like in Australia, it is super common. Like you'll see this at every gas station, every petrol station, every like convenience store, every grocery store, like everywhere. They have these like bottles of just like pretty much like refrigerated like coffee or I don't know, milk. And in America, like I'm sure we have them, like we definitely do have them, but they're not common. Like it's not something that you'll see like everywhere.
Wow, that's really surprising to me. In Australia, the market for iced coffee drinks is huge. So many people rely on their iced coffees and buy them on a daily basis. But I guess at the same time, probably in America, it's probably more popular to buy energy drinks like Red Bull and stuff like that.
Number 16 is a funny one, and that is bike bells. So I got a bike recently to go to work, and I was asking some people at my work, I was like, yeah, you know, I know you needed to like wear a helmet here. Are there any other things I need to know, like any bike rules? And they're like, oh yeah, well, you know, you need to have a light whenever you, like, if you're driving at night. I was like, okay, yeah. And they're like, and you also need a bell. And I'm like, a bell? Like, what, am I a child? Like, why do I need a bell? If you have a bell on your bike in America, like, your bike looks like this. Like, if you're 11 or older, like, you have graduated from bells. Anyways, I said that, and like, all of them looked at me. There was about like 5 of us all on lunch break, and they all looked at me like, are you crazy? Like, how could you possibly pass someone without a bell? You gotta ring it to let them know. And I just found this was super funny because I have realized people ring their stupid bells at you all the time in Australia. And as an American, it's so annoying. That is rude. It's like inconsiderate. Like, beep beep bitches, get out of my way, ding ding ding. Like, I don't know, I just hate it. If you're gonna pass someone, you just say on your left, like, or in Australia, on your right. You just kind of like give them a little holler, or you just don't say anything and just pass them like, I don't know, with plenty of, you know, plenty of room. Like, it's not driving a car, it's driving a bike. It's not that hard. Oh, and also, can I tell you how annoying these bells are? Every time I like go up a curb or I like hit a bump or I'm like, like anytime that, the stupid thing rings, and so I always like want to look back because I think someone else is ringing at me, but it's just my own bell from all the bumps. And yeah, anyways, it's a stupid law. Like, I'm saying it, I don't support it, but anyways.
Okay, I'm not a bike rider, so I don't know, but I'm just wondering, is that just an odd Queenslander thing? Because I've never ever had a bike toot their little bell at me when they've gone past. Anytime I've been somewhere and a bike's gone past, they've just gone past. They haven't said anything or rang a bell or anything, they've just gone past. So, and I've certainly not seen bikes around Tasmania or Victoria where people have to have bells on them. So, if someone can clarify that for me, please do.
Number 17, so KFC is like way bigger here in Australia. So yes, we have it in America, but I describe it as like, it's like bottom, it's like not a good fast food restaurant. Like bottom of the food chain, you're gonna go to like 10 other fast food places before you go there. Here, KFC I'd say is much better than it is in America, at least I like it more. And yeah, I guess that's why it's more popular here.
It probably also goes back to the lack of variety in Australian fast food restaurants. If you go back to the 80s, then in some states you didn't even have Macca's, it was just KFC. But it used to be that you could only get like KFC, Pizza Hut or Macca's, and Australians tend to stay loyal to brands, so KFC has gone the distance for that reason. It is, I will say, one of the more expensive takeaways in Australia. So while there is still a loyalty to KFC, and you can see KFC everywhere, it is probably still not as popular as going to Macca's or somewhere like that because of the expense.
Number 18 is XX. Whenever you're texting someone, it's common to put like XX at the end of your message. It's like a form of endearment. I think it comes from like XOXO, like hugs and kisses. It's like kiss kiss, but it's not like saying I want to kiss you. I don't know. It's just like, we just don't do that in America, but it's a way of texting here, like a kind of cutesy way to finish your message. And yeah, in America, we don't do that.
We do that in Australia? I've never had messages, text messages, where people have put XX on the XX on the end. We use emoji like regular people. If you're writing someone a birthday card, you might put XX or XOX inside it for, you know, kisses and hugs. But text messages, not that I'm aware of.
Alright, number 19 is kind of sick, and I have never seen this in America. So, and it's not everywhere in Australia, it's only some places, but that is covered public parking lots. Some shopping centers, you will see like little tents over like in the parking lot, like, you know, to protect the cars a little bit, give them some shade. Really nice, very considerate, just a little extra touch to the parking lots that, Yeah, it's not everywhere in Australia, but I've never seen it not once in America.
Yep, if you've ever hopped into a car on a hot day in Australia and nearly asphyxiated from the heat or burnt your hands on the steering wheel, you'd understand why we have those covers in many car parks in the warmer areas in Australia.
Number 20 is that cars actually stop here when you cross the road. So I mentioned this in another video, but it wasn't one of my like America versus Australia differences video. But if you're just getting close to the road, like the cars will stop. And I'm like, what are you stopping for? And it's just because you're like close to a crosswalk, and they're so nice, they give you so much room to stop. And like we'll be looking at my phone, like not expecting to go, and they'll be stopping for me, and then I'll feel bad because I'm like holding up traffic. I'm like, oh crap. So yeah, cars here are super nice to pedestrians.
That really depends on what state you're in. I really struggled when I first moved to Victoria from Tasmania, because I used to refer to people as kamikaze pedestrians. People would just simply walk straight onto a pedestrian crossing without looking, and you had to slam your brakes on because they were just trained that cars would somehow see them regardless and stop regardless. So, yeah, in some states you do learn very quickly that you have to stop to let pedestrians cross, because otherwise they're just going to cross anyway. In Tasmania, it's definitely different. Pedestrians actually wait and make sure that vehicles see them before they start crossing. And if the vehicle is approaching a pedestrian crossing and the pedestrian isn't quite at the point of crossing, the vehicle will keep going. They won't stop for the pedestrian. So, yes, it is different in different states.
Number 22 is circumcision. So in America, it is very popular to get circumcised. Like it is, I don't know, I feel like most Americans are circumcised. In Australia, that is not the case. Like I'm sure some people are circumcised here, but like the vast majority of Australians are not circumcised.
I'm just wondering what the research process was for discovering that little bit of information.
23 is one that has been driving me crazy lately, but that is y'all's pretzel options in Australia. So in America, if you go to the grocery store and you're looking for pretzels, there's going to be a whole section of like 20 different types of pretzels. We have skinny pretzels, fat pretzels, extra salted pretzels. We have pretzels like sticks. We have pretzel like rods. We have pretzels in like the typical pretzel shape that are big, small, big and fat. Like we literally have like, there's probably like 20 different types of pretzels. Here in Australia, when you get pretzels, literally the entire pretzel section will just be like 2 bags. Like it'll be like brand 1, brand 2, one type of pretzel, like that's it.
That's because Australians just really don't eat pretzels all that often. You might buy pretzels to add to a platter for like a Christmas snack platter. But for the most part, we're just not into pretzels. It's not really a thing here in Australia.
Number 24 is the business TJ Maxx in America. It's called TK Maxx in Australia. So TJ Maxx, TK Maxx, literally the same thing, just one letter different. Number 25, I still don't understand. Guys, please help me figure this one out. Tasty cheese. What the heck is tasty cheese? Is it tasty because it tastes good? So tasty cheese in Australia is cheddar cheese. But it's called tasty, like it tastes good. Why? Why is it tasty? What does tasty mean? Just call it cheddar.
No, there's a difference. Cheddar is your more bland kind of cheddar cheese. Tasty cheese is a type of cheddar, I guess, but it's your more mature cheddar cheese. It's got a richer flavour. It's a stronger flavour. Hence the reason it's called tasty, because it's got a lot more flavour than regular cheddar cheese. I have left out some of the parts of this video. If you enjoy what this guy says, go and check out his original video. He is good value. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please hit the like button. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. Help me to turn it into something worthwhile. And leave a comment below.